Good evening, friends, and welcome. Tonight, we're going to journey into a story that asks much of us. A story born from the quiet moments before sleep, but one that travels into the deepest shadows of history. It's a story about the transatlantic slave trade. It's about what happens when a human being is stolen from their home, forced into the hell of a slave ship, and stripped of their name, their family, their dignity, stripped of their very humanity. How did anyone survive months adrift in that floating purgatory? So, turn the lights down low. Let the sound of the bell guide you as we step into tonight's story. You awaken to the first pale light filtering through the cracks of a round, mud-walled home. The air is cool, carrying the scent of the thatched roof and the rich, red earth. This is your home, a small, circular house built from a skeleton of bent poles and covered in a thick layer of clay that keeps it cool in the heat and warm in the cold. Across this land, in West Africa, villages like yours dot the landscape. Your family, or perhaps more accurately, your clan, numbers around 15 to 20 people. You all live together, a tight-knit community woven from blood and time. Today is an ordinary day. You and your brothers and sisters will soon head to the fields to help clear the land, to sow the millet and sorghum seeds that will sustain you. Or maybe you'll go down to the Niger River to cast your nets. The river is the lifeblood of your village, not just watering the crops, but offering up fat, whiskered catfish from its depths. Your world isn't large, but it is whole. Life here revolves around a few essential pillars: kinship, land, and the spirits. Everyone belongs to a lineage, a clan. You work the land together, raise children together, share the harvest together. There is an old proverb here, one that has been spoken for generations. It takes a village to raise a child, and you are living proof of its truth. You have grown up under the watchful eyes of countless aunts and uncles, older brothers and sisters. Whenever a neighbor had a tasty morsel, a piece of fruit or roasted meat, a portion was always pressed into your hand. This deep, unbreakable bond is your shield against the hardships of nature and the threats from the outside world. But of course, life isn't only labor. Your favorite time is dusk, when the village gathers to listen to the griot. He is a living library, the keeper of your people's history, his mind a vast repository of memory. He taps out a rhythm on his drum, his voice falling into an ancient cadence as he tells the stories of your tribe's heroes, the miracles of the gods, and the wars and alliances that shaped the world you know today. These stories teach you that you are not just one person alone. You are the living extension of countless ancestors whose spirits, you believe, have never truly left. They watch over you from another realm, alongside the gods. This is why your village life is punctuated by festivals and ceremonies, moments when everyone comes together to sing, to dance, to play every instrument that can make a joyful noise, hoping the ancestors and the gods will see the vibrant life of their descendants and be pleased, blessing you with rain and a good harvest. This is your world. A world centered on the family, built on farming and craftsmanship, lived under the gaze of spirits and ancestors, from sunrise to sunset. The food you eat comes from your own fields, yams and taro. The fish from your river. Sometimes, for a special treat, you and your friends might dig up a termite mound or catch plump locust to roast over the fire. It might sound strange to some, but here, insects are a rich source of protein, a delicacy. In this world, one person holds a status of both reverence and fear, the blacksmith. You watch your village's blacksmith with a mixture of awe and trepidation. He can take dark, lumpy, or from the earth, thrust it into the roaring heart of his forge until it glows with an otherworldly red, and then, with the rhythmic clang of his hammer, transform it into sharp axe heads, life-giving hoes, and lethal spear points. To you, it is pure magic. And so, the blacksmith is more than a craftsman. He is a leader, a judge, sometimes even a healer. People believe he can communicate with the spirits, that he can divine the future. But what you do not know, what you cannot possibly imagine, is that in a place so far away, it might as well be the moon. The world is changing. Men with skin as pale as bleached cloth, sailing colossal wooden ships with no oars, have been lingering on the coasts of your continent for centuries. At first, they came for gold and spices. But then, on another, even more distant continent, they carved out vast plantations. And these plantations required an immense amount of labor to grow a sweet grass called sugar and a fragrant leaf called tobacco. And so, their eyes, like those of hungry hawks, began to look past the coastline, gazing inland toward you. You know nothing of this. You are still wondering who will win the wrestling match planned for this evening. That day, most of the adults in your village have gone to a nearby market to trade surplus grain for salt and cloth. You and your younger sister are left at home, as you have been many times before. The afternoon sun is warm and lazy. You're leaning against the doorframe, nearly drifting off to sleep. And it is in this moment of perfect, unsuspecting peace that your world ends. Two tall, powerful men and a woman appear as if from nowhere, scaling the low mud wall of your family's compound. You don't even have time to scream before a rough, calloused hand clamps over your mouth, another arm wrapping around your body like an iron band. You and your sister are gagged, your hands bound. Like two lambs for the slaughter, you are dragged into the nearest thicket of trees. Your world, the one that was so warm and familiar just a second ago, has collapsed. All that remains is the cold, sharp edge of terror and a bottomless, silent despair. Your captors, you notice with a sickening jolt, are black, just like you. Africans, they might be from a rival, warlike tribe. Or perhaps they are professionals, predators who make their living in this grim new trade. This is a painful, complex truth. Over the long centuries of the slave trade, it is estimated that around 90% of the Africans who were enslaved were first captured by other Africans who then sold them to the Europeans. You and your sister spend that first night huddled together in terror. The next day, you are forced to march deeper into the forest. At one point, you come to a path that looks vaguely familiar. In the distance, you see the silhouettes of a few people, and with a surge of desperate hope, you scream for help. But your cries only earn you tighter bonds and a harsher gag. They even shove you into a large burlap sack to muffle the sound. That night, you cling to each other, soaking one another's faces with silent tears. But even that last, small comfort is about to be stolen from you. The next morning, at a fork in the path, you and your sister are brutally separated. She is ripped from your arms, her frantic cries quickly fading down another trail. You feel something tear inside you, a wound so deep you can't even find the words for the numb, hollow chaos that follows. You are merged into a larger group, a long, shuffling line of men, women, and children from different villages. Their eyes mirror the same fear and confusion you feel in your own. This is a coffle, a slow-moving procession of the captured. You don't understand their languages, their dialects. Your only common bond is the rope around your neck and the shared terror of the unknown. You have begun a long, seemingly endless journey, walking away from everything you have ever known, one step at a time. You don't know it, but your capture was likely not a random act of violence. It was the result of a vast, highly organized commercial network. In the hinterlands of your homeland, the Igbo territory, an organization known as the Arrow Confederacy held a near monopoly on the slave trade. They used a powerful, fear-inducing oracle combined with military alliances with neighboring warrior clans to create a brutally efficient supply chain, capturing people in the interior and funneling them to the coast. It was a bizarre and terrifying business model. They were merchants, diplomats, and agents of a god all at once. They used commerce, military might, and religion to turn the entire region into their own private reservoir of human lives. And the fuel for this massive network? Goods from Europe, especially firearms. European traders offered rum, cloth, beads, and most importantly, guns, in exchange for captives like you from middlemen like the Arrow. A tribe that acquired guns could more easily conquer and raid its weaponless neighbors, capturing more people to trade for more guns. It was a vicious, self-perpetuating cycle. And you, an unarmed child, have just become a single, insignificant commodity in this enormous, blood-soaked chain of profit. The coffle moves slowly along the dusty path. The rope chafes your neck raw. Your feet are blistered and bleeding. Thirst and hunger burn inside you like a low fire. You are beginning to understand your new status, and the understanding chills you to the bone. The word slave is not entirely foreign to you. Before you were captured, there were slaves in your own father's household. In many West African societies, slavery existed in various forms. There were debt slaves, people forced into servitude to pay off a debt. There were prisoners of war. There were domestic servants. But that kind of slavery was fundamentally different from what you are now experiencing. In your homeland, a slave was often considered an extension of the family, a member of the household, albeit with the lowest status. They were still human. They could own property, they could marry, and their children would not necessarily inherit their status. In many places, masters and slaves ate similar food, wore similar clothes, and lived in similar dwellings. Because in many West African cultures, land could not be privately owned. A person's power and influence were measured by how many people they controlled. In that system, a slave was more a reflection of social and political relationships than a piece of economic property. But what you are becoming is something you've never heard of, a chattel slave. Chattel. The word means property, an object. You are no longer a person with diminished rights. You are becoming a thing. Like an axe or a bag of grain, you can be bought, sold, traded, or even destroyed at will. And your children, and their children after them, will automatically inherit your status as property with no hope of ever being free. This is a permanent, inheritable, and racially based system of bondage. It is designed to rip you out of your lineage, your culture, your history, to sever your roots and turn you into a product with no past and no future. This transformation from person to property is the most cruel and central element of the entire slave trade. It is not just about stealing your freedom, it is about destroying the very definition of who you are. Your African captors, perhaps they understood this transaction in the traditional logic of warfare, capturing members of an enemy tribe. But they either did not know or did not care that these captives were being fed into a new, purely commercial system that would utterly objectify them. This very point has sparked a huge historical debate. Did the Atlantic slave trade simply exploit and expand a pre-existing African system of slavery, or did it fundamentally and horrifically transform it? Some scholars argue that the Europeans simply tapped into an existing market, that they were buyers, not the creators of the system. This view emphasizes the agency of the African groups involved. But many more historians argue that the unprecedented demand from the Europeans, their racist ideologies, and their purely profit-driven logic combined to create a monstrous form of slavery that had never existed in Africa before. It was like a deadly virus that infected and grotesquely twisted the existing social structures of the continent. You've lost track of how many days you've been walking. The sun rises and sets. Your feet are numb, moving mechanically, one after the other. This is the rhythm of the coffle, a forced march of despair. You are woken before dawn, given a meager ration of food, usually a small, hard cake of grain, and then the endless walking begins again. The midday sun is a venomous bite on your skin. You see people collapse from heat stroke and dehydration. The guards merely glance at them, untie the rope from their necks, and leave them on the side of the path like a discarded stone. The coffle cannot stop. Time is money, and any delay increases the spoilage of the cargo. You watch as a young woman's baby, born on the road, grows gravely ill. The woman begs the guards to let her stop to care for her child, but her pleas are answered with the lash of a whip. The baby dies in her arms. She is not even allowed to bury him. As the coffle moves on, she is forced to place his tiny body in the tall grass by the roadside before being dragged away. Her wails eventually turn to silent, shuddering sobs, and finally, her eyes become as empty and dead as everyone else's. The Scottish explorer Mungo Park traveled with a slave coffle in the late 18th century and recorded what he saw. In his diary, he described a heartbreaking scene. A female slave became too ill to walk. Her owner, a traveling minstrel, simply traded her to another man for a young girl. The girl had come out with her friends to watch the coffle depart, completely unaware of her fate. Her master simply took her by the hand and gave her to the minstrel. Park wrote, "I have never seen such a sudden and profound expression of grief on a human face. The terror she showed when they put the load on her head and the rope around her neck and the sorrow with which she took leave of her companions were truly moving. And all around you, tragedies like this are a daily occurrence." The path you walk is not some wild trail through the jungle. It is an established trade route, a commercial artery connecting the interior to the coast. But where these paths once carried salt, gold, and ivory, their primary cargo now is people. Around your neck is a heavy wooden yoke. It has a formal name, a slave fork or gory. It's made from a thick tree branch with a natural V shape. Your neck is wedged into the bottom of the V, and an iron bar is hammered through the two ends, locking you in. The front of this yoke is tied to the yoke of the person in front of you. You are strung together like fish on a line. If one person stumbles, it pulls everyone behind them off balance. The weight of the wood constantly presses on your shoulders and neck. The rough bark has rubbed your skin raw, and the open sores sting with sweat and dust. At night, you are forced to lie down on the hard ground, still locked in the yoke. You can't turn over, can't find a comfortable position. In the haze between waking and sleeping, you feel as if you're being held not by a wooden device, but by the jaws of some great invisible beast, slowly draining the life and spirit out of you. Historical accounts call this a tool of torture. Its purpose was not just to prevent escape, but to break your will through constant, grinding pain, to reduce you to a compliant skeleton. And yet, in the midst of this extreme suffering, a new, silent connection begins to form between you and the others. You start to learn the breathing rhythm of the person in front of you. You can anticipate an uphill climb or a descent from the subtle shift in their gait. When the guards aren't looking, someone in the line next to you will signal with their eyes to a puddle of water you can quickly scoop up. You have no common language. You come from different tribes, speak different dialects. But you are beginning to share a new language, a language of glances, gestures, and the shared grammar of suffering. After what feels like an eternity, the smell of the air changes. The dry, grassy scent of the interior is gone, replaced by something salty, damp, and utterly new. A murmur runs through the coffle. You look toward the horizon and see it, a shimmering, constantly moving blue line. You have never seen anything like it. This endless, breathing expanse of blue fills you with the profound and nameless dread. It is the ocean. Soon, a massive fortress built of white stone appears on the coast, looming like a great beast. You have never seen such a building. Compared to the mud huts of your village, it looks like a dwelling for the gods. This could be Cape Coast Castle in modern-day Ghana, or perhaps Elmina Castle, just a few miles away. These forts were built by the Portuguese, the Dutch, and the English, originally for trading gold and ivory. But over time, they became the great, fortified marketplaces of the human cargo trade. You notice the cannons on the castle walls are all pointing out to sea. You will only understand later that they weren't there to defend against attacks from the land, from people like you. They were there to fight off other European ships, rival nations competing for the same trade routes, the same cargo. At the gates of the castle, you see them for the first time. The white men. Their appearance confirms the most terrifying rumors you've heard on the long march. Their skin is pale, as if it's been soaked in water. Their hair is the color of straw or the setting sun, long and straight. Their language is a collection of sharp, clipped sounds, like the chirping of birds. You are convinced you have entered a world of demons, that you are about to be killed and eaten. This was a common and profound fear among the captured, that the white men were cannibals. When you see the smoke rising from chimneys within the castle walls and glimpse huge iron cauldrons, this fear becomes terrifyingly real. You are shoved inside the castle. It's like a bustling, nightmarish town. You see other groups of captives bound like you. You also see well-dressed, arrogant African merchants haggling with the white men. You even see mixed-race children, the offspring of the European soldiers and traders stationed here, and local African women. These children move freely through the castle, belonging neither fully to the white world nor the African one, a strange, in-between people. Some of them would grow up to become middlemen and translators in the trade themselves. The sight is bewildering. The rules of this world are utterly alien to everything you have known. You are herded down a dark, slippery ramp into the belly of the castle. A thick, suffocating stench hits you with the force of a physical blow. It's a smell unlike anything you have ever experienced, the smell of hell itself, a compound of feces, vomit, sweat, and decay. This is the slave dungeon. The light vanishes. Your eyes, accustomed to the bright sun, can see nothing. You can only hear the groans, coughs, and weeping of countless others around you. The floor is slick and sticky, covered in a thick layer of filth. Centuries later, when archaeologists excavated these dungeons, they analyzed the compacted floor. They discovered it was a hardened, stratified layer composed of the feces, urine, blood, sweat, vomit, and shed skin of the millions of captives who had passed through over hundreds of years. You are standing on a floor made of human suffering. The dungeons are impossibly small, yet hundreds, sometimes over 1,000 people are packed inside. The air is thin and hot. You can barely breathe. People are crammed together like sardines in a tin, with no room to lie down, forced to crouch or lean against one another. There are no windows, only high on the walls, a few small air vents that do little to stir the foul, stagnant air. Death is a constant companion. Every day, people die from disease, from suffocation, from sheer despair. Their bodies are not removed immediately. You are forced to share this suffocating space with the dying and the dead, feeling the last of their life ebb away, their bodies growing cold beside you. This extreme environment is more than just physical torture. It is a meticulously designed weapon to destroy the human spirit. Social psychologists studying modern torture have found that sensory deprivation, sensory overload, and the denial of sleep and basic hygiene are among the most effective methods for breaking a person's will. What you're experiencing here is a textbook application of these techniques. It is a systematic process designed to make you lose all sense of time, space, and even self. Some scholars have theorized a post-traumatic slave syndrome, arguing that this deep generational trauma continues to affect the descendants of the enslaved to this day. Indirectly above this man-made hell, the most grotesque irony is taking place. In Cape Coast Castle, directly above the male slave dungeon where you are imprisoned, was the chapel where the governor and his officers prayed. In the quietest moments, you can sometimes hear the faint, ghostly sound of a pipe organ and the singing of hymns. They are praying to their God while standing directly on top of the hell they created. This chilling coexistence of the sacred and the profane is one of the most profound and disturbing truths of the entire slave trade system. After an unknown number of days and nights in the dungeon, you are finally brought back to the surface. The bright sunlight is a physical pain blinding you. The rush of fresh air into your lungs makes you dizzy. You and the other survivors are herded into the castle courtyard for the final inspection. A new slave ship has arrived and is anchored offshore. The ship's captain and the ship's surgeon will now personally select their cargo. You are ordered to strip naked. The surgeon, a white man, approaches you as if you were livestock. He pries open your mouth to inspect your teeth. He peels back your eyelids to check for disease. He orders you to jump, to turn, examining your limbs for any defects, your skin for any sores. His touch is cold, clinical, and devoid of any human emotion. He is not examining you for your health. He is assessing a product for his employer. Your age, your strength, your physical condition, these things determine your price. It is a chilling fusion of early medical knowledge and cold-blooded commerce. The doctor's role here is not to heal, but to price the goods. Those who are too weak, too ravaged by disease from their time in the dungeon, or who have obvious physical impairments, are brutally rejected by the surgeon. They are called refuse slaves or macrons. Their fate is often the most tragic. Unwilling to waste any more food on defective goods that won't sell, the African traders will sometimes execute them on the spot in front of everyone and toss their bodies into the sea. It is both the cutting of their financial losses and a bloody warning to the rest of you. You pass the inspection. Next, you are dragged to a glowing brazier. Two sailors hold you down while another takes a red-hot iron from the fire. The searing pain as it's pressed into your chest or shoulder is blinding. A guttural scream is torn from your throat. The air fills with the sickening smell of your own burning flesh. When the iron is removed, it leaves a permanent raised scar. The initials of a trading company, like RAC for the Royal African Company, or the mark of the ship's owner. This brand is the ultimate symbol of ownership. It is a mark seared into your body with fire and pain, erasing your past, your name, your lineage, and engraving a new identity onto your very skin, property. In Europe at this time, branding was a common punishment for criminals, a mark of shame burned onto the face or body. Perhaps this gives us a glimpse into how the Europeans understood this act. It wasn't just a label. It was a mark of debasement, permanently assigning you to a subhuman class. How could they do this? Was it a deep-seated racial prejudice that allowed them to see you as less than human from the start? Or did the immense profitability of the slave trade itself create and reinforce racist ideologies to justify such an inhuman practice? It's a classic chicken and egg question. Some argue that pre-existing European prejudices against Africans formed the psychological foundation for the trade. Others argue that it was precisely to defend this lucrative business that Europeans systematically constructed an entire ideology of racial inferiority, painting you as savages in need of civilizing. Did the hatred lead to the enslavement, or did the enslavement breed the hatred? For you, the answer is irrelevant. As you are shoved back into the dungeon, the fresh brand on your skin throbbing with pain, you understand one thing with absolute clarity. You are no longer a who. You are now a what. Finally, the day of departure arrives. The dungeon doors are thrown open. You are driven out like cattle, stumbling into the light under the crack of whips and the shouts of the guards. You are marched through a final, heavy stone gateway. On the other side is the roaring sea. In later years, this gateway would be given a name heavy with despair, the door of no return. You are herded into small boats and rowed out to the great ship. The closer you get, the more oppressive it seems. It's a floating wooden mountain, its tall masts reaching for the sky, its sides lined with the dark mouths of cannons. This ship will be your next prison, a floating, moving dungeon. As you climb the swaying ladder to the deck, you see the white sailors again. Their eyes hold no curiosity, no pity, only the cold, appraising stare of men looking at cargo. You are brought onto the main deck and see a strange setup. A tall, thick wooden wall, maybe 10 feet high, called a barricado, splits the deck in two. It separates the areas for the men and women, and also serves as a defensive wall for the crew in case of a revolt. High nets are strung along the sides of the ship to prevent you from trying to end your suffering by jumping into the sea. Everything is designed for one purpose: control. Every detail of this ship has been engineered to manage and suppress its living, breathing, and potentially rebellious cargo. Before being forced below deck, you take one last look at the land. You see the white walls of the castle, the familiar curve of the coastline, the continent of your birth. Then the hatch is slammed shut and the world goes black. The first part of your life, all your memories, have been sealed away forever. You are shoved into the ship's hold. It is even more terrifying than the castle dungeon because it is constantly moving. The ceiling is so low you cannot stand. You can only crouch or lie flat. You are shackled to another man, ankle to ankle. You are packed in on rough wooden shelves, side by side, with almost no space between you. The air is 100 times more foul than in the dungeon. Olada Equiano, a survivor of this journey who later wrote his life story, described it with the strongest words he could find. The stench of the hold was so intolerably loathsome that it was dangerous to remain there for any time. The closeness of the place and the heat of the climate, so crowded that each had scarcely room to turn himself, almost suffocated us. The shrieks of the women and the groans of the dying rendered the whole a scene of horror almost inconceivable. The heat, the sweat, the vomit, the excrement, it all ferments into a toxic, suffocating gas. You feel as if you are breathing poison. For sanitation, there are only a few large buckets for hundreds of people. They quickly overflow, and the entire floor of the hold becomes a slick of human waste. In rough seas, the ship pitches and rolls, and the filth sloshes everywhere. There is no escape. Why pack human beings into such horrific conditions? The answer lies in a cold economic calculation, a debate known as tight packing versus loose packing. Tight packers argued for cramming as many bodies as possible into the available space. Their logic was that even though this would lead to a higher death rate, the sheer volume of people meant that more would survive the journey in total, maximizing profit. The famous diagram of the slave ship Brooks, showing human figures arranged like puzzle pieces, is the ultimate illustration of this philosophy. Loose packers, on the other hand, argued that giving the captives a little more room, better ventilation, and slightly better sanitation would lower the mortality rate. Though they carried fewer people per voyage, the higher survival rate and better physical condition of the slaves on arrival meant they could be sold for higher prices, potentially leading to a greater overall profit. In this entire debate, no one was talking about humanity. They were talking about business strategies, about maximizing their return on investment. You and every person crammed in beside you are just a number on their balance sheet. You lie in the darkness, listening to the clinking of chains, the screams of the women, the moans of the dying, and the constant, dull thud of the waves against the hull. You feel you are not on a ship, but in the belly of some great sea monster, being slowly digested. Here, everything has been taken from you: your name, your family, your language, your clothes, even the right to stand. The only thing you have left is your body and what it can feel: pain, hunger, thirst, suffocation. Your entire universe has shrunk to this small, dark, filthy patch of wood. If the weather is calm, the crew brings you up to the deck in small groups for a few hours each day. The first sight of the sun makes your eyes stream with tears, but you greedily gulp the fresh, salt-tinged air. This is your only respite. You are fed twice a day. The crew brings large tubs of boiled horse beans, yams, or rice, cooked into a thick mush. 10 people share one tub, eating with wooden spoons or their bare hands. Sometimes they add a sauce made of palm oil, flour, water, and pepper. After the meal comes the strangest, most grotesque ritual of the day: the dancing of the slaves. A sailor brings out a drum or a fiddle and plays a monotonous tune. You are ordered to jump up and down. If anyone is too weak or too grief-stricken to move, a whip cracks across their back until they begin to hop again. The heavy shackles on your ankles rub your raw skin, sending shocks of pain up your legs with every movement. The captains believed this forced exercise kept your muscles from atrophying and prevented what they called fixed melancholy, a suicidal depression. It was a twisted form of care, using a whip to keep their merchandise in sellable condition. Your only remaining power, your final act of defiance, is to refuse to eat. But this is met with the utmost cruelty. When you clamp your mouth shut, the crew uses a device called a speculum orum, or mouth opener. This scissor-like metal tool was originally used by surgeons, but here it is an instrument of torture. They force it between your teeth, crank it open, and pour the mush down your throat, often breaking your teeth and tearing the corners of your mouth in the process. They are determined to keep you alive, but only as a living object. Disease spreads through the hold like an invisible fire. The most common is dysentery, which the sailors call the bloody flux. It causes violent, bloody diarrhea, leading to rapid dehydration and death. Smallpox, measles, and scurvy also run rampant. In this sealed, filthy environment, one sick person can infect the entire cargo hold. Every morning, you wake to find another cold body beside you. Sometimes, the man you are shackled to dies silently in the night, and you are forced to lie next to his corpse for hours until the crew comes to unlock the chains. They drag the body up to the deck and, without ceremony, throw it overboard. You notice that sharks have begun to follow the ship, waiting for their daily meal. Amidst the endless despair, the fire of resistance never truly goes out. Most often, it takes the form of individual silent protest, refusing food, or a sullen, deliberate noncompliance during the forced dancing. But what the crew fears most is an organized, violent uprising. Revolts most often happened while the ship was still near the African coast, with the homeland still visible. This gave the captives one last, desperate hope of returning home. The women were often crucial to these plots. Because they were usually under less restraint than the men, sometimes allowed to move about the deck, they could scout the ship's layout, find potential weapons, a piece of wood, a loose iron nail, and smuggle them down to the men in the hold. When the signal for revolt was given, the hold would erupt from a hell of misery into a battlefield. Men would use their chains as weapons, attacking the guards, their primary goal to storm the barricado on the deck where the weapons were kept. But the vast majority of these uprisings failed. The crew had overwhelming firepower. They would fire their muskets through loopholes in the barricado into the unarmed crowd. The leaders of the revolt, if captured alive, would face a meticulously cruel and public execution designed to terrorize the survivors into submission. Historians debate how often these revolts occurred. Some studies of ship logs and insurance records suggest they happened on as many as 1 in 10 voyages. But all agree on one thing: they did happen. The spirit of resistance, even in the face of impossible odds, was never completely extinguished. After what feels like a lifetime at sea, the atmosphere in the hold begins to change. The crew seems less on edge. The rations of food and water increase slightly. Then, one day, you are brought on deck, and you smell it, the scent of land, a mixture of flowers and damp earth. A green line appears on the horizon. A great cheer goes up from all the white men on board. You have arrived. This could be Barbados or Jamaica in the Caribbean, major hubs of the slave trade. Or it could be Charleston in the colony of South Carolina. But you are not taken ashore immediately. First, there is one final process: polishing the product. You are brought on deck, washed down with seawater, and your skin is rubbed with palm oil to make it glisten, to give you an appearance of health. Your head is shaved. They even use caustics to hide the sores and whip marks on your back. It is the final preparation of a product for market. Then you are taken ashore into a pen called a slave yard. Here, you will face one of the most terrifying and humiliating experiences of your life: the slave auction. There are two main types. In one, you are brought onto a raised platform, alone or in a small group. The buyers, the plantation owners, and their agents circle you. They open your mouth, check your teeth, squeeze your muscles, inspecting your body as if you were an animal. Then the bidding begins. The other, more chaotic method is called a scramble. All the captives are herded into a large yard. The buyers pay a flat fee to enter. At the sound of a gun or a drum, a gate is thrown open and the buyers rush in, grabbing the people they want. The yard explodes into a terrifying scene of screaming, crying, and fighting as families and friends are ripped apart. This is the ultimate purpose of the auction, to shatter every human bond. You see a mother on her knees, clinging to the leg of her child, begging the man who bought them not to separate them, only to be kicked away. You see two men who were shackled together for months, who survived the Middle Passage by supporting one another, sold to different owners, never to see each other again. One survivor later recalled, "Night and day you could hear men and women screaming. Mothers, fathers, sisters, and brothers were taken without warning. People were always dying from a broken heart." After the auction, a new rope is placed around your neck, and you follow your new master on yet another journey. You are taken to a vast plantation growing a crop you've never seen before, perhaps tobacco, perhaps rice. Here, you will begin the final stage of your transformation, a process called seasoning. You are now what they call a new or saltwater Negro because you still carry the scent of Africa and the sea. The goal of the plantation owner is to season you over the next 1 to 3 years, to break you and mold you into a compliant, productive plantation slave. It is a war waged on your mind and body, designed to erase your African identity, your language, your memories, and force you to adapt to a new climate, new food, and most importantly, a new life of endless, brutal labor. You are assigned to a work gang. The strongest, like you, are put in the great gang, tasked with the most physically demanding work, digging ditches in a rice field or clearing new land for tobacco from sunrise to sunset under the constant threat of the overseer's whip. This seasoning process has an incredibly high mortality rate. In the Caribbean sugar colonies, it's estimated that as many as 1/3 to 1/2 of all new slaves died within their first year. On the North American mainland, the death toll was also staggering. Tropical diseases, malnutrition, violence, and the sheer shock to the system created a lethal combination. And yet, even as everything is systematically taken from you, you and your fellow survivors begin a stubborn, creative, and powerful process of cultural rebuilding. Your families were destroyed, so you create new kinship networks, calling fellow survivors who share no blood, brother, sister, auntie. You are forbidden to speak your own language, so as you learn your master's English, you blend it with the grammar and rhythms of your African tongue, creating new languages like Gullah in the Sea Islands of South Carolina. You are forbidden to worship your own gods, so you subtly merge them with the saints of the Christian Bible, creating new, resilient forms of spirituality. Late at night, in the slave quarters, you gather in secret. You tell the stories from your homeland, like the tales of Anansi the spider, the clever trickster who could outwit the most powerful enemies, a story that now has a powerful new meaning. You sing new songs that would one day be called spirituals. On the surface, they are about stories from the Bible, but hidden within the lyrics are coded messages, messages of hope, of sorrow, and sometimes directions for escape. Your body has been enslaved. But in the quiet, hidden corners of your life, in the stories you tell and the songs you sing, your spirit has begun the long, arduous journey of creating a new world, a new way of being, a new fight for freedom.